People of Reddit, what's the most desperate thing you've ever done for money? SFW warning. Before we start with the first story, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Number 20. I participated in some market research for a new beer. Sounded great at the time. I get paid to drink beer. Anyway, it was a bunch of different beers in small plastic cups, all of which started out tasting like the strainings of the devil's underpants and progressively got worse. They kept bringing more out until one guy cracked, swiped all his beers off the table and stormed out yelling, "I wouldn't even give this shit to my dog." I still don't know if it was market research or some bizarre psychological experiment. Number 19. I was expecting much juicier answers here. I made with my first husband, and he sold the photos and videos. They are somewhere in the bowels of the internet, but I have no idea where. No face though. Number 18. Many years ago, when I was a child and my mother and I were facing homelessness, we'd spend the nights at various places, like laundromats or hospitals. One night when we were really hungry, she had me dive into the wishing well to collect quarters to use for the vending machine. It's one of those surreal memories that's stuck with me. Edit. My mother, bless her heart, passed away a few years after the event in question. We had a complicated relationship because of how young I was, but I don't hold anything against her as an adult. Life just deals people a rough hand sometimes. I certainly don't know what I would have done better if I were in her shoes. Number 17. Those dumb surveys. Wasn't worth the time I wasted. Only got like $10 total before I gave up. As a kid I did that, and they paid us in these dumb token things that were worth pennies. Had a couple hundred, but it wasn't worth anything. Yeah, that was freaking Bitcoin, and I got rid of that computer and never found the old emails again. Would be a millionaire right now. Number 16. I used to pose naked for art classes while I was an undergrad. Pay was pretty good, about 5 times minimum wage. One grad student who was a good artist, but kind of odd, asked if I would do a private session of a few hours. I agreed as I was desperate for money. I figured that I had just been hired for I was a bit conflicted, but then just figured why not. I showed up cleaned and prepped and dressed to look good, and it turned out that the artist really did want me to pose. During the whole thing they were polite but very specific on poses, and it was actually a bit challenging. They were so intense. While not particularly good looking, the talent and effort was kind of a turn on. By the end I was half hoping it would turn into and they would keep telling me how to pose, what to do, etc. We went over the time, but the artist was nice and grateful and paid extra. So I guess that I learned I would be willing to have for money in some situations. Number 15. Started scamming meal delivery companies to be able to eat. I'd break open the ice pack and claim all the food was damaged. Then I'd get come for the meals and get a whole new box delivered for free. Felt very shameful, but hunger is real. That sounds like a rough place to be. I'm sure you're not happy looking back, but when you're legitimately starving, you'll do anything to survive. I hope you're doing better now. Number 14. While I never sold blood to buy alcohol, there was a time when I'd donate blood every Friday night in order to require less alcohol. Edit. Several people have pointed out that the body doesn't replenish red blood cells that quickly, so it looks like there's some kind of trick of memory going on here. This was 20 plus years ago. So probably I was donating plasma, and not blood, and either misremembering or did not, at the time, know the difference. Also possible is just that something that I did a few times grew in memory to something I did weekly. Brains are weird. Number 13. Back when I was a competitive horseback rider in my late teens, I mucked stalls for 12 hours on Saturday and Sunday for one extra riding lesson a week. 24 hours work for one 1-hour lesson on my pony I was paying to lease. That was actually a sweet deal. One lesson was $30. Minimum wage was about $8. Worse was when I was training ponies and broke my jaw on a Saturday and got yelled at for not working Sunday. I went to the ER on Monday and got yelled at for waiting so long and rushed into surgery. I didn't eat solid food for 6 weeks. They used to wire shut. I can talk, cough, yawn without opening my mouth still. Number 12. I met a complete stranger from the internet to sell him some used underwear. If it were a send it in the mail thing, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But part of it was that he wanted me to meet him to give them to him. And then he would pay me in cash. It was a pretty good amount, so I went for it. We talked for a while beforehand and he was really nice. I didn't get the vibe that I was gonna get killed and I needed the money. It was a quick meet in a Walmart parking lot. Nothing really bad happened. Reply: I did this back in college as well. Pleasant dude I met over Craigslist would buy used panties weekly and often give me gift cards to Victoria's Secret on top of the payment. He traveled fairly often and would also bring sweets and books from his trips for me. I honestly hope he's doing well. The money was good, and he seemed like a well-meaning dude. Number 11. I was poor growing up. Really poor. One time, around age 8 or 9, I collected a bunch of buttons wherever I could find them around the house, and then hit the street, door to door, trying to sell them for $1 a piece. It took me 3 hours to make $5. I was so excited that I finally had enough money to buy a sugary cereal, Lucky Charms. I went to 7-Eleven, bought a box, and got home to eat it. But we didn't have milk, so I started to cry. I ended up using water instead. It was very, very pitiful. Fast forward 40 years and now I can buy milk and cereal anytime I want. It's great. I never take it for granted. Number 10. A few years after high school, one of my HS crushes messaged me on Facebook. I was in between jobs and still living at home. She said she was coming back into town and wanted to hang out. I didn't have any money for a date. I took some rifles that were handed down to me by family to pawn shop to sell. They'd offered me a ridiculously low amount. I felt embarrassed and put on the spot. I wanted the date to happen. Sold the rifles. Next day we got to talking and she apologized and told me we would not be hanging out and that she was going on a date with one of her crushes from high school. I've never had this much secondhand embarrassment by reading someone's comment before. Number 9. I was 20 broke, about to be homeless. Guy I used to work for thought I was hot, said he'd pay me $100 if I let him suck me off and jerked him off while he did it. That hundo helped me get my life back on track. Sure, I had to jerk another guy off to get it. But a D is a D. Edit. For those that asked, yes, I'm doing much better now. I have a great job as a software developer and finished getting my bachelor's. This incident was 15 years ago. Gay for paid is 100% a thing in the porn industry. Many of the gay porn actors are straight.
But you guys are getting paid?
Number 8. Oh boy. Well, it took 9 years and a court mandate for my ex-husband to help in any way financially with our daughter. It was a really difficult time period for us. I literally counted out pennies to have enough to get groceries or a quarter tank of gas. I always thought she'd like to have my wedding rings to her dad someday. I have my mom's ring for my dad even though they split when I was a baby. It means a lot but isn't worth anything. It's silver. My rings weren't worth much either, but I finally had to hawk them. I got $150 for them and I couldn't get enough money to buy them back. I'll never forgive myself for that. Edit. Thanks everyone. I do feel better a bit. Logically, I know it was a necessity. It's just so many years later and things are leagues and bounds better. I realize $150 is easier to come by and that's when the regret hits. But back then, it was make or break money and I need to remember that more often. Thank you. Number 7. I made $50 when I was randomly approached in a bar to be on a foot fetish site. There was no nudity or actual sexiness involved. Just a lot of pictures of women's feet on my face, chest, etc. It was way more uncomfortable than it should have been. Number 6. Once when unemployed, I bought a bunch of king-size candy at Costco and went door to door selling it saying it was a fundraiser for a church youth group. Made a good profit and was able to pay rent that month. Number 5. In university, I signed up as a lab rat for various studies. One involved staying awake for 30+ hours in a room with no sunlight, communication, or anything else that might give me a sense of time. Among blood and urine tests, as well as various probes and monitoring devices, it also involved keeping a thermometer in my ass the entire time. $1,400 is $1,400 though. Number 4. I was newly broke as a joke and had a date in hours. She wanted to go to Red Lobster. I went through my car, parents' cars, sisters' cars, couches, everything. Looking for coins, I had a partial used gift card to somewhere as well. I took it all to the grocery store, cashed in the change, sold the gift card for practically nothing. I had just enough to cover myself. If she expected me to get the bill, I was finished. I'd have to own up to having like $31.25 to my name. Luckily, she didn't. She piped up and split the bill. So now we're married. Number 3. Participated in a sleep study where they had us wired up to electrodes to monitor our responses at periodic intervals across 3 days without sleep. It was brutal. I learned I cannot go without sleep for 2 days in a row. Number 2. I joined a medical study that was researching the effects of severe weight gain and weight loss on bone marrow. Involved 10 days of eating 6,000 calories a day and then 10 days of not eating anything. You had to stay in a hospital room the entire time. Every day they took a bone marrow sample, which was decidedly not fun. $7,000 at the end of the 20 days. Number 1. I participated in a food study where I couldn't eat for a day before. Arrived at the lab crazy early in the morning, had a tube put down my throat, and lay there for 6 hours as they pumped liquids into and out of my stomach. After the first 2 hours, I begged them to at least turn on the TV, but they would only let me watch PBS so I couldn't accidentally see any commercials about food. It wasn't fun, but the pay was decent, and they served me a steak dinner afterward. And that's all the 20 best stories. If you like more of this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your similar experience in the comment below. See you in the next video.